Alright, vocal warm-ups, This shit's gonna sound so weird when I actually get it in the editing software. I'm just now realizing the kind of sounds that I'm making. Over the course of my life, there have been many games that have shaped how I look at everything else that I play. I'm sure that everyone has games like this. Halo Reach, Kingdom Hearts, and Chrono Trigger are all games that really resonate with me. Those are the core experiences that I wouldn't change for anything else. But in addition to those core experiences, there's been one that stands above all. A little over a year ago, I made what I consider to be one of my best videos on this channel, discussing one of the games that meant a lot to me as a kid, Dark Cloud. This town builder dungeon crawler really made me lose my marbles as a 12-year-old for some reason. Even though the game is very flawed in certain aspects, it still means a lot to me even to this day. But what do these two paragraphs have to do with this video? Well, after walking into a GameStop to get a game for our vacation many years ago, my brother found an unmarked PS2 case with the words Dark Cloud 2 written on it. I was surprised, and over the course of the next few months, I would play this game extensively. Why? Was it that much better than the first game? Yes. Dark Cloud 2, or Dark Chronicle outside of the US, is technically a sequel, but you don't have to play the first game to understand this one. Which is good, as the first game can be a bit of a slog at times. But this new game is nothing but action all the time. There's loads more added to make this game leaps better than what came before. To start, there's full-fledged voice acting and cutscenes, a redone weapon upgrade system, a completely new battle system, a good story, even better music, and a more streamlined, consistent experience for the better. However, for this video, I'd like to focus more on Dark Chronicle as a standalone game, rather than what it improves on the first game, cause honestly, we'd be here all day. If you want to make that comparison for yourself, check out my video on Dark Cloud right up here. Enough stalling. Let me tell you about the greatest JRPG to ever grace this godforsaken earth. After you choose a starting costume for this guy named Max, you immediately start playing as someone completely different and get introduced to the combat system. Characters have two attacks, a regular melee and a ranged. You can influence how you swing with the analog stick, either diving towards the enemy from far away or backflipping to avoid their attacks. Once the tutorial is over, this character realizes that her father has been murdered. It's a very sad moment, even though we don't know who the fuck you even are. Cutting over to the real game, we're in Palm Brinks with our main protagonist Maximilian, and the typical JRPG festival is in town, so you gotta go to it. Bro, his eyes are open here, this game sucks. You hear some stuff you're not supposed to hear with the mayor and this clown about the outside world, so naturally it's time to get out of there before the circus troupe stabs you and steals your necklace. You fucking killed that guy. You manage to escape to the sewer and are introduced to the first dungeon of the game, the underground water channel. Max has a different ranged weapon to the one in the tutorial, being a gun. Each weapon menu shows what you need to build it up into an entirely new weapon. Alongside that, every weapon also has specific stats for different types of monsters, so you'll start dealing more damage from leveling up, infusing materials into your weapons, and also by building up to new weapons. This three-pronged progression system makes going through the game feel fantastic. The tutorials in this game are also surprisingly good. Unfortunately, I won't have time to read them because I'm blown past that shit. Catch me doing laps around your ass, loser! The tutorial for weapons ties directly with the tutorial for metals, which are optional challenges to be completed each level. Later in the game, you can come back to each level in the dungeons like these with new objectives in mind. Alright, so I keep mentioning this weapon system, but what's it about? Well, every item in the game world that can go in your inventory can be spectrumized and infused into a weapon. Every item in the game gives an attribute towards your weapon for 1 upgrade point. This means that a random wind crystal you found gives 3 cyclone? Well, so does this bundle of hay. After some more story, we're also introduced to the inventing mechanic. By taking specific photos with your camera, you can combine them to craft new items. These allow access to really nice upgrades early on if you know what to look for, or if you just take photos of everything like I do. And the best part is that it's completely optional for progression. It rewards you for spending the time to take photos and combine with some really powerful gear and items, and it's just another way to add back into that power feedback loop we talked about earlier. The ride pod gets introduced as our pseudo-secondary character, more so functioning as an augment for Max, allowing him to take on huge creatures with ease and absolutely dominating weaker ones. The only downside is the fuel source, but even that you can negate later on with some upgrades, as the ride pod itself gains XP and has its own leveling system. Another thing that's very impressive about this game is the way it mixes its music. If you clear all the monsters on a floor, now you get this happy tune to explore and pick up what you have left. But then you get to the last floor of the dungeon and the music changes to this ominous tone. On this final level in particular, we learn a very important lesson. Always open chests from behind. After the final regular level of the dungeon, our first boss is Flotsam's giant mecha clown. His nose turns into bombs and you have to throw them back at him to deal damage. Once we defeat that and move to the exit of the channel, we are finally introduced to the real game. Cedric, the man behind the ride pod, arrives on a cool new train and takes us over to Wise Owl Forest. Wait, hang on, no, that's the wrong game. On the way, you do basically the same minigame boss fight, but this time you're throwing bombs off the side of a train. Even though it is still technically the same mechanic, it's showcasing it in a new and exciting way. After we kick Flotsam's ass, we're introduced to the only other new character in this game, Monica. Remember her? Turns out Monica is from the future. She has the blue stone to your red, and these stones are capable of traveling forwards and backwards in time respectively. The big bad guy of this game also destroyed all of the big locations in our time period, so we need to restore them for the future, starting with this area called Sindane. You combine this with being able to actually go to the future and see all of your progression as you build towns and essential areas for plot progression, making it feel like you're really making a difference. Wait, did you say build towns? Oh yes, my friend. Time to introduce you to the second half of this game, Georama. See, you have to craft houses by hand in this game, and by placing down houses and finding people to fill them, you recreate all of these timelines in the future. Placing villagers in their preferred spots in the present might make a shop in the future have some better items. Tying back into what makes this game feel so good to play is just progressing. You can build towns, explore dungeons, or just take the time to go off and try and craft something new. Every single one of these options is viable, and we get even more viable options in the next dungeon. After taking some time to go snap some photos in Palm Brinks and invent a couple of new things, we make our way into the second dungeon of the game, Rainbow Butterfly Wood. Thematically, it's a very cool dungeon, and with music that's extremely soothing. Also in this dungeon, we're introduced to seals, which prevent you from playing as either Max or Monica for that floor. Should be fairly easy to deal with, I imagine. Introduced alongside the Animal Crossing town building simulator, there's also geostones that give you information on how to properly build your town for the future. You can go back to Palm Brinks and get the residents there to immigrate to your new town. This usually involves doing side errands for them, but once you get them to come with you, they sit on the train till they get put inside of a house. After we do a little bit more Georama to fix the future, we're introduced to our last new gameplay mechanic for a while, monster transformations. See, while Max has the ability to hop on this very large robot with two very large arms that deal a lot of damage, Monica has the ability to transform into a monster. Guess which one of these two is more useful? Once we fight the boss of Rainbow Butterfly Wood, which is shockingly a rainbow butterfly, we head over to Balance Valley in search of a sage that can give us some more answers. Balance Valley is absolutely gorgeous, with extremely high plateaus that make up 4 different sections of the area. Each time you put down buildings or any other thing that has weight, it changes the height of the plateau. This adds an extra mechanic we need to be wary of since all 4 areas need to be the same level. We find out the sage we need to see is dead, and his apprentice Lynn has been bedridden ever since. After getting the only doctor in the entire world to take a look at her, we discover she's been afflicted with toxic mist, a very rare disease that has no cure. Except for some really good food found only in the future. So we decide to head to Starlight Canyon in search of some geostones. Inside of Starlight Canyon, we get introduced to coins. Coins can be spectrumized like any other item, but they give modifiers to weapons like health drain, item steals, or crits. After getting a coin and building up Monica's sword, we head back to Sindane to get 100% completion for the Georama. For doing so, we get the Jurak gun. Another way you can progress that I didn't mention is through miracle chests in the future. They give max health upgrades and some defense boosts. After a couple more floors, we reach the somewhat midpoint of the dungeon and get access to this game's biggest time waster, Spheda. Spheda. At the end of every level in a dungeon from here on out, a dimensional rift will open up and a golf ball will appear somewhere on the level. Yeah, you can play golf in this dungeon crawler. And the funniest part is that if you make it in the required strokes, it gives you really good rewards. So now you could just fuck off and play golf for however long, getting things like level up powder, gemstones for synthesis, and even some coins if you're lucky. This game is fucking awesome. And yes, in case you were wondering, I did go back to all of the previous levels just to beat them again and play Spheda.
It's like this, yo. This is 10% pain, 20% pain, 15% 100% concentrated power of pain, 5% pain, 50% pain, 100% reason to remember the name.
What? Once we're done digging around with golf, we craft a new battery pack for the ride pod and advance further into Starlight Canyon until we reach the lighthouse. Once we travel back in time to save Crest, we get bombarded by a huge gunship. There, we engage in the coolest boss fight in this game. You swap constantly between Monica battling the man who killed her father, and Max protecting this girl from ever-circling evil flames. Once the battle is over, Crest gives his life once again to protect the lighthouse. But now that the timeline has been adjusted, Lynn dedicates her life to becoming a great sage. She still has a dead body in her lap. Why is she so happy? In the future, Lynn gives us some extra information on the whereabouts of Griffin. He's currently 10,000 years in the past, and since we can only travel 100 years back and forth, we're gonna need some extra help from the geniuses at Luna Labs on the coast of a beach named Venetio. But before we leave, we get full completion for Balance Valley and get the Serpent Slicer, a reference to the sword of similar design from Dark Cloud 1. We also buy a new outfit for Monica, which, yeah, never mind, we're just gonna put on the old one. Once we arrive at Venetio, we meet a rabbit man named Pau, and a water monster named Shingala. He runs away from us like a bastard, so we head into Ocean's Roar Cave, the 4th dungeon of the game, to chase after him. Each floor of this dungeon is split into higher and lower segments, either being in the ocean or in a flooded cavern. On the first floor of this dungeon, we finally upgrade our grenade launcher into the Dark Viper, which can steal health from enemies. Here, we're also introduced to another build-up requirement. Now, we have to kill specific enemies with this weapon, which will prevent us from building it up for a while since those enemies don't appear until later chapters. After exploring a bit of Ocean's Roar Cave and hitting the craziest Spheda shot of my life,
finally chat.
we head over to the mayor to turn in our medals we've been earning from Spheda for a name change ticket. If you change the name of a weapon into another weapon that already exists, it'll transform it, so this allows you to get endgame weapons by the 3rd dungeon. Of course, this massively breaks the game, so I will not be doing that. What am I getting the ticket for then? The only thing that actually matters in this game is Spheda, so check out my cool new club. After infusing my wrench with some glass, it turns into a hammer. That sentence is so funny. Hammers are an alternative to the wrench that swing less often, but hit way harder. Inside of the later dungeon floors, I noticed myself actually getting much better at the combat. It's not necessarily Dark Souls levels of gameplay. Oh my god, he referenced the funny Sun game. But dodging and attacking enemies like this feels really good. Alright, you know what? Fuck it. Fuck it. I'm just aiming it directly up. We're going for the biggest bounce-o shot of my career.
Let's go. Oh my god. There's no way.
Oh my fucking god!
Oh my god! Holy shit. Oh, he hit no rematch immediately. Holy shit. I can't believe you got that. That was beautiful. Holy shit.
We finally make it over to Shingala, but he's being mind-controlled. We need to feed him an electric fish to short out the device controlling him. But I'm a huge idiot and accidentally killed him, which results in an instant game over. After we continue in this dungeon a bit longer, we get introduced to the Elemental Block, which allows certain weapons to absorb elemental projectiles and fire them back. After spectrumizing the Serpent Slicer into Monica's main sword, it inherited the ability to Elemental Block. Once we make it to the end of the dungeon and save all of the Shigura monsters, we head into the future and develop the Ixion, a time travel-based train that could take us back to the past. In the future, we also meet Elena, Max's mother, discovering not only that Elena is from the future, but also that Griffin has his own Atlamelia stone and has been using it to fuck with the timeline. In order to assist in the future, we need to restore a place called Gundora Workshop so they can craft a battleship by the name of Pasnos. The location in the present is Heimrada, at the foot of a volcano. Speaking of volcanoes, my Discord server. It's only ever active once every 5,000 years, but when it happens, we usually have, like, cake or something. If you want early access to videos like these, or you just want to inform me that I'm the worst human who's ever existed because I played Chip in Guilty Gear Strive, link is in the description. After discovering that Heimrada is currently besieged by embers that prevent us from building wood or straw-based buildings, we head into the longest dungeon by far, Mount Gundor. This place is so cool. No joke, when I was thinking about making this video, I forgot this dungeon was even here. Obviously I remembered it was in a volcano, but I didn't realize how cool this place would be. Everything from the chests, to the music, to the atmosphere of it all is incredibly awesome. Even the way you go to the next floor is by riding a rock on top of a heat geyser. After doing a bit of Georama and walking a moderate distance to our next objective, we destroy the machine that's creating the embers, and Gaspard doesn't like that one bit. After we blast him down with the ride pod, Monica jumps on the ship ready for one last fight, but the ship crashes into the crater with her and Gaspard on it. The lower floors of Mount Gundor also look completely different, for the better. There's even an entirely new gate key, just for these last 5 floors or so. Heading back to Heimrada to take care of the town building there nets us the fire horn, and we use it to get to the final showdown with Gaspard. The first portion of this fight is much tougher than it was back in Starlight Canyon, but now that I've got the combat down, it's also much more of a fun fight. Gaspard dies, but he's given his proper ending. Monica is given a sword left from her father, the Holy Daedalus Blade. After that, we're shown Pasnos, the mobile battle station of the future. We're shown the effectiveness of the battle station in a glorious 240p cutscene. Hell yeah, baby, this is PS2 era. I bet this is gonna look so good once OBS absolutely fucking deep fries it too. Max finally reunites with his mom, and we get word from the Luna Lab that the Ixion has been completed, so we can finally travel back to the past. After we go back to 10,000 years ago, we meet Emperor Griffin, and he looks like this. This is really the final boss of the game? I put 20 hours into this game and even more into editing it, and he really dies this? Yeah, and he stole our Atlamelia. With the power of all 3 stones at his control, Griffin brings his palace back to the present day and starts fucking shit up. Our new goal is to get Pasnos into the present to fight Griffin head on, and to do so we need 4 gems from each of the 4 previous dungeons. On the alternate paths to get these gems are new enemies, some of which are needed to build up our weapons, which is great because Max's gun has been the exact same for the past 10 hours of gameplay, and it's starting to suck. I'll save you the grind of going back to the old location, so I'll just give you the highlights. We upgrade Max's hammer to the heavy hammer, just 1 upgrade shy of the ultimate weapon. We also upgrade Monica's sword to the crosshinder, and Max's gun to gun special. As I said before, I originally wasn't going to use the name change ticket to get an ultimate weapon, but grinding out Monica's bracelet doesn't sound interesting or fun to me. So after getting another 40 medals, I turn them in for Love, the ultimate bracelet. Even though it's supposed to be an ultimate weapon, it's roughly the same power as what Max has, which is why I don't feel too bad about acquiring it. After gathering all the gems and getting up to 24 hours of total game time, we officially start the final chapter of the game. I get my ass absolutely handed to me on the first floor of Moonflower Palace, so I head back to Gundorada Workshop to pick up some defense boosts and HP upgrades. Moonflower Palace is a very good dungeon, so we're gonna go ahead and put it in the C tier right next to the basement from Binding of Isaac. After getting a world record amount of weapons on the same floor and building up Monica's sword, we learn some backstory about our main villain. See, Griffin was originally a rabbit boy named Cyrus. He was in love with a human queen who shared his love of flowers. She puts him in charge of the flower garden, and his hatred of humans is explained through the queen's death over some ancient war. Once we make our way to the final floor, we upgrade Max's gun to the Sigma Bazooka, and we finally acquire the ultimate weapon of the game. Some could even say it's legendary. After selling every single non-important item in my inventory and upgrading the ride pod one last time, the final battle has finally arrived. The first phase consists of Griffin using the 3 Atlamelia to fly around. Once we knock the stones down, he gets on the ground and converts his wings to swords. Once the fight is over, we get a cutscene of Griffin explaining the war was over the Atlamelia stones, and that an evil element has been feeding off of Griffin's hatred of humans, growing to be one of the most powerful beings in the world. Max just barely saves Griffin's life, but with all 3 stones at the hands of the dark element, he plans to bring the moon crashing down and destroying the world. Griffin gets fucking impaled, and we begin our march towards the top of the dark element spire. After defeating several mini-bosses, Dark Element's gimmick is revealed to be that either Max or Monica can exclusively attack him at any given moment. After a long and strenuous battle, Dark Element tells us that nothing really matters because the moon is about to fall anyways. Cyrus remembers his true goal in life, passed down from his ancestors, and disarms the falling moon. And I feel like now is an important time to mention something about this game. Before making this video, I had never seen the ending. My PS2 disc was extremely scratched, and even though I had beaten this boss before, I never got past a loading screen after. But I can say confidently, after this ending, after all of this video, and all of my hours of playtime, this is absolutely my favorite game. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I have enjoyed playing it.
I'll take my chances, racing